All right, welcome everyone to our Laserfiche webinar, The New You in 2025. Thanks for joining here. We have some time set aside here today to review some settings in Laserfiche, and we'll go through that here momentarily. All right, the title of our webinar is The New You in 2025, Reviewing Your User Settings and Starting Fresh in the New Year. My name is Kyle Niebel, technical trainer here at CDI. Glad to have you with us. If you need any help, post your questions in the question box. There's also a chat window, I believe, and we will be able to answer your questions either during the session or shortly thereafter. So please feel free to ask away as we go through. You are automatically muted, so your question area is your area of choice in order to ask any questions. And I will be periodically reviewing those, so hopefully I can answer them live. If not, we'll send you an email and answer those offline. All right, so anytime you want those. So for the webinar, any notes that you want to take, feel free, take screenshots. The questions I mentioned, please do that. At the end, there will be a survey. If you would like to answer that survey, please do. That helps us fine-tune our presentations. And this webinar will be recorded and will show up on our YouTube channel in just a few days. That YouTube channel, just search for CDI or Cities Digital, and you'll find our channel on YouTube with this and many other webinars. Look forward to seeing you there. All right, so there's a picture of the channel. And if you just want to type in the URL, it's youtube.com/user/citiesdigital/videos. The usual. All right, our webinar today is targeted at Laserfiche admins or IT staff who support Laserfiche and just wanted to know a bit more. Laserfiche subject matter experts that use Laserfiche already will learn a bit about some new things here. And if you're just a Laserfiche user but want to learn more about how the Laserfiche system works, we welcome you to our session. So here we go. Now our topics today. We're going to talk about the differences between a Laserfiche named user versus a Windows account user. This is important in some of the other settings that we're going to see here today. Another topic will be setting password requirements on a Laserfiche named user, generating a password, and disabling unused accounts. So we'll take a look at that. Assigning feature rights and privileges by group, not users. We'll take a look at that in the admin console here today. That's a pretty interesting feature. And you might already know this, but those of you who have never seen this, it's a really great way to easily give users feature rights and or privileges just by adding them to a group. We'll take a look at security tags and learn what that can give you in your Laserfiche system. Fifth, we will show you some custom attributes that can help other Laserfiche applications. You wouldn't think of it, but every user, a named user that is, has attributes, and those can be handy when it comes to Laserfiche forms or Laserfiche workflow. And finally, we'll view open active user sessions, checked out documents, and learn how we can release entry locks in the admin console when certain things occur in the system. All right. Now, the differences between a named user and a Windows account. As you can imagine, they are certainly different. There's sometimes just a few named users. They're really referred to as repository users. Otherwise, a Windows account user would be in the Windows Accounts area in the Users and Groups node in the Laserfiche admin console. We'll take a look at that. All right. The next subject we'll go ahead and take a look at is setting up password requirements, generating passwords, and disabling unused accounts. Now, this is specific to named users, not Windows accounts. Windows accounts come from Active Directory in Windows and is managed by a different system than Laserfiche. It's managed by the Microsoft Active Directory system and by your IT staff. So your passwords are coming if you have Windows, from a different place. This is specific to a named user in Laserfiche, or in other words, a Laserfiche only named user. Okay, we'll show you that here in the admin console in just a moment. As far as feature rights and privileges go, you might be aware, you might not be aware, that all users typically will have feature rights, meaning what can they do in the Laserfiche repository when they've signed into it. Can they import documents? Can the user move documents, print or email documents out of the system? Things like that. Normal activities that you would find in a Laserfiche repository. Assigned privileges are for admins, typically, although power user scenarios can be enabled using some of these privileges. But in general, if you have a small list of users, let's say 5 users, you might just assign feature rights and privileges to all those users and never worry about groups. But in larger organizations, you have a mix of users. And if you don't want to spend time assigning feature rights and or privileges to each individual user, you could set it up on a group and just add users to the group. In fact, managing by group is a really good best practice, one that we find very useful in a number of ways, not only for this method, but also for setting security on folders, which is not part of this class, but I bet you if you look in our YouTube channel, you'd find a class on security. Now, we mentioned the use of security tags. In the metadata setup of Laserfiche, you can create security tags as opposed to informational tags. A tag in general is something you could search for if it's an informational tag. A security tag will help us hide documents from those who don't have the security tag assigned to their user account. So we'll take a look about how that gets implemented in the admin console. We also will be looking at how custom attributes can help other Laserfiche applications. Now, if you didn't know it, your user account, when you set up customizations in the client or you make a saved search, those are saved as attributes, and there's other attributes that can be added to your account. And we'll take a look at a couple of them. One of them is for Laserfiche forms, where we can actually tell forms that you have an email address. And when it automatically sends an email to your user account, it will use the email address that's been configured as an attribute in your user account. Now, if you're a Windows user, it might not necessarily work because, well, your Windows account already has an email address, so that's built into that. This property for attributes for forms, for example, that you'll see here is really for Laserfiche named users, not Windows accounts. But we'll show you how we implement that and how it shows up in forms. And finally, in the activity node, we can see who is active and logged in. In the sessions node, we can view Office checked out documents, for example. And if there are entry locks, which is fairly rare, but does occur on occasion, we can release the entry locks in that system as well from the admin console. It shows up as a locked document or folder in the repository, and most users will try and open the document. They'll get a "this entry is locked" message, and then call you as the IT or Laserfiche admin saying, "Hey, I've got an entry lock and everybody's complaining about it. Can you take a look?" And you can release it. So that being said, let's go ahead and do a quick demo of those topics. And we'll start with our administration console. This is the Windows version. And if you've never seen it before, maybe you've seen the web version. And in the web console, you get the same capabilities, just in different areas. But we're going to use the Windows admin console in this case. This is always found on the Laserfiche server itself, so you can always find it there. Our first topic was the difference between named users and Windows users. And under our users and groups node, we have repository users. And these could be in here as actual users. They could be some service accounts, like you'll always find a workflow account. Typically, we call it WF. You might find a forms account in there. These are named users, and they have a license assigned to them. If you double click to open the properties, you can see it says repository named user full license assigned down there at the bottom. That tells us, great, they've got a full license, they can log in and upload content into a repository, etc., and probably even log into Laserfiche forms, I would assume. As opposed to a Windows account, which is going to be indicated by the domain name / username. And it will look a bit different. If we go back to, let's open up a demo account here. You can see it's got a name, it's got a description, authentication method if you want to connect it to a Windows account, but normally it's not. It's got a password area and the named user area, plus some other settings. If we look at a Windows account, it's fairly limited, and it's just got authentication, usually set for trust. The name comes from the Windows account, so you can't really change that. But it does have the same tabs up at the top: groups, the feature rights and privileges tab, tags, auditing, and attributes. And we're going to come back to these tabs in just a moment. So that's the difference there. So now that we know that there's differences in those, we can then go talk about the setting of passwords. Now, as you might imagine, because if you have a Windows account that's managed by Active Directory, that password policy is managed by Microsoft Active Directory. So we don't have to worry about it if you have a Windows account. But when it comes to named Laserfiche accounts, or in this case, a repository user, or if you're using Laserfiche Directory Server and it's a Laserfiche named user account, which you might find here, I've got one here, that was created in Laserfiche Directory Server and is in this repository as a named user. See how I misspelled my name? That is also a named user account. So they're very similar, they just come from a different source and they access the repository, but they're not a Windows account, let's put it that way. And when it comes to the password properties for an account here, if I open up the properties, we've got authentication only. So in this case, the password properties on this account are really actually governed back at the Laserfiche Directory Server side, which I can open up if we need to, but let's just pretend that it's kind of similar, and we'll go look at a other named user, a repository named user in this case. We'll open that account up, and on the account, we can create a new password. You can either type it in or use the Generate Password button, which will give you a password which you should probably copy and then email to your user, and maybe even you want to check the user must change password to next login option so that you give them that new password and send it to you. Now, this Generate Password could be used just for service accounts that nobody really uses to log in with, but you use with your applications so that you have a nice unique password, okay? If you have another password generating system, great, you could use that, but this is built into Laserfiche, and you can then use that directly, okay? So that's if you want to generate that. Password age, you can set that. You can even tell this account to ignore the maximum password age. Again, not Windows accounts, Laserfiche accounts only. So where is that controlled, right? The question is, well, great, ignore the minimum maximum password age, but is it even set? Let's go in the admin console down to repository options and click on password policy in that choice. And as you can see, we have some settings here that need to be changed. So if you double click on the properties, you can see, hey, here's the periodic basis number of days before password expires. Set it for whatever number of days you want, 90 days, 180 days, your choice. And you can even give a warning to the user when they log into the repository that it is expiring. And further, you can enforce the password history so that they can't reuse passwords more than however many times back. Maybe you want to have them recycle every 4, just enforce it with 4 times. Any additional help is in the help file there, and hit the help button. That'll launch Laserfiche's online help guide. You can also enforce complexity of passwords in the same area. And once you've set all those settings, they'll be displayed in the diagram here under the properties of password policy, which then again affects each of these accounts. All right, unless you've told it to ignore the maximum password age, right? The notifications are for per user. So each time the user uses their account to log into Laserfiche, it will pop up with the warning. It's not a manual thing, it's just automatic for the user when they log in. So the question was, hey, are you able to do multiple notifications, or does it do it one time? It's actually each time the user logs in, they'll get a notification. So hopefully that clarifies that question. All right. Next up is assigning feature rights and privileges by group. Now, if you look at any account, whether it be Windows account, you've got your rights tab with feature rights and privileges. You've got a group that also has feature rights and privileges, and you've got your end users with rights and privileges as well. Even directory accounts, right? That can be assigned rights and privileges. Now, if you've got thousands of users, do you want to do this for each user when you add them to the system? No. In fact, if you're using Windows accounts, which is the preferred method and best practice, they're being automatically added because you've added a special domain group, and it's synchronizing and adding those users, and they'll log in using Windows authentication. But instead of having to go to each user every time they log in and then set their security feature rights, we're going to set them on groups. So you might have a domain group. I created a silly one here called My Domain Group 1, and simply set the rights here. I'll set all feature rights because that's probably the best thing for most users, and apply that. And then I can either add domain users here or go back to those Windows accounts and simply add them to be a member of that domain group and apply. Now, does a domain group have feature rights? Yes. Does my user? Possibly not, right? So let's Windows account, we'll go here, and we'll clear my rights on this. Let's hit apply. Now, I'm going to click the view button down at the bottom right corner to view effective feature rights. Give it a second to view that if it doesn't crash my system. And it should show us that I do have feature rights as well. Either just decided to lock up, or it's on a screen somewhere else that I can't see. There it is. Oh, it just took its time. All right, so notice the list of feature rights and privileges are there, and yet my account doesn't have it, but because I'm in a group, I do get those feature rights and or privileges by nature of the fact that I'm in the group. So a much better way to manage properties for the user is to add them to groups rather than individually assigning any properties. Just makes administration a lot easier in that case. All right, good stuff. Now, the next topic was security tags. And in a repository, you might have content in a folder that most people will see. Most people can see the folder, and they can see the content in that folder. But let's say you have to allow most users access to that folder, but yet there's a document or two that should be only visible to some higher level staff, maybe a C-level manager, CEO, CFO, whatever. You need that document in that folder because that CFO or CEO has access to that folder, but you want to hide that document from other users who actually also see that same folder. Maybe there's some managers who also see the folder and we want to hide it. Well, we can use what they call a security tag to effectively do that. So you have to create a security tag, and we do that under metadata management and go to tags. I've already created a couple here. You can see the difference. There's info tags that if you open up the properties, notice the security tag checkbox is not set. Description is optional, by the way. The tag name will show up in the client side when we assign the tag to documents. A security tag has the checkbox checked, and you can't reverse it. As you can see, it's grayed out. Once you create a security tag, it's a security tag from then on, which begets a question. Did you notice the info tag had the security tag checkbox available? Now, if you were to go ahead and do that, it even warns you, this is a irreversible change. So I don't recommend doing this. I would create security tags on purpose, not change a info tag to a security tag. That could have serious repercussions. The reason being, a security tag is only relevant to a single entry. It has no scope. If you're used to Laserfiche security, you know that folders have inheritance. So if you can see one folder, you can see the subfolders and the documents inside of it. If you can't see a folder, you cannot see the subfolders and documents in it. Well, with security tags, if I don't have the security tag, I may not be able to see that entry, but if it's applied to a folder, I could do a search and theoretically get results from any of its subfolders, even though I can't see that particular folder. So security tags should be applied to documents only. Hopefully that is clear, but again, security tags would be assigned to documents only. And the way that appears is if we go into our repository and look at a folder and we want to apply a security tag, we can do that under the metadata option and go to our tags and set a security tag. Notice all four are visible to my admin account. Now, I can control who has the access to security tags, or you can control who has access to security tags. So we're going to go back to that. So if we click OK, we've got our auto file folder, the W4 document, and I'm going to sign out and log in as a different user. Oh, and I hit it. So let's go here. Now, do I have, if I look at metadata, do I have a security tag available to me here? Notice my user account doesn't have security tags to even apply. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the auto file folder with this account. So I'm going to go back, sign out as our, and log back in as our, whoop, I got to change that login. Our admin, go ahead and we'll go to incoming and let's apply a security tag to that first document. Funny, security tag has a security tag. There we go. Okay, so the demo user should not see the first one. They'll see the second PDF, but not the first one with that security tag assigned. So let's test that, make sure that works, and then we'll show you how we implemented that in the admin console. So we'll look at incoming scans and notice it's invisible. I can see the folder, but that document effectively disappeared because of that security tag. In the admin console, not only is the security tag created, but under our user accounts, we'll go look and see, I logged in as demo. Does demo have any security tags under the tags tab? No, and that's why I can't apply it or see anything with that security tag. If I added that security tag, then my demo account would be able to see that document in that folder. Now the admin account had all of them assigned. So we can go to our tags tab for the admin account and we can see it does have it. So anybody who has been given a security tag can apply it and see any other documents that have been assigned that same tag. All right, pretty good stuff there with security tags. And that's the value of using security tags. It's an interesting way. It's not folder security. Again, it does not have any scope, so it really should only be applied to documents. If I've said that more than twice, then you know it's an important thing to remember. So apply security tags sparingly and only on documents, not folders, because it would even potentially allow users to find content under that folder, even if they didn't see the folder itself. Whereas folder security, if I do a search for documents and I can't see anything under that folder, my search results won't show anything from that unseen folder as well. So different ways of running security with tags. All right, the next topic was attributes that can help a Laserfiche application. So in Laserfiche forms, there are on occasion in your forms diagram, which I'm going to bring up right here and show you, there is an email service task. If we follow this form process, it goes out and there's an email notification task in this form process. And I might have logged in as a named Laserfiche user, not a Windows account, again, because it already has a defaulted email. But as you can see in here, there's a email that's being sent to this named user. I've chosen a different one. Could be anything we want. We could add demo, that demo account to the system, or any other named user in the repository. I think this one's set up not to use. Forms can be set up in some ways that, oh, there it is. So that demo account, how do we know what its email address is when the system is told to send it an email? Well, we can define that in the user's attributes. I'm going to minimize our browser here, and we'll go look at that named user account here in demo. And there are attributes for our user. And if we see, let's look in this list of subsets. It's not in here, but I don't have a forms setting. In fact, I did set one up under the forms account. Let's go in there. Let's open up and look at the attributes for this account. And in the drop-down list, you can actually see a subset of forms and an email. And it's got an email address in there. You can manually add this. In fact, you just hit the add button and you can add the in brackets forms. You can even do workflow, so that workflow has an email that it could use. And then after that bracket, just put in the word email. Could be e-mail or e-mail. I think both work, but check your documentation for which one is effective, and or if you're interested, email me and I'll confirm which one, but I think it's just email, all one word. So you'd enter it as forms in parentheses, and you could do lowercase, you could do forms with a capital F and everything else lowercase or full case, and then email in there, and then type in the data box the actual email address of this particular user. All right, so once you've got that entered, the form system will know that since you've logged in with that account and it's being sent to that user, it will use that user's forms attribute for email to send the email. And that's how we can help forms email you if you're not a Windows user. Okay, Windows accounts, if it's sending to a Windows account, then it already knows because it's connected to that domain and it can find it and send it to that particular email. So Windows accounts, it's much easier. But if you have named user accounts like this, you can do that. In fact, you could even do it for, I think under our attributes here, you could add that as well for these Laserfiche directory accounts as well, if it doesn't have their email already set up in LFDS. So you can set properties in two places, but I would say attributes is probably the better place to do that. All right. So that is how attributes for forms at least, and or workflow can be set to know what your email address is. Workflow has another method to do that, which I won't get into, but it's their trustee directory settings. If you've ever seen that in Workflow Designer, you can set individual trustees and their email attributes there, but that's for a different topic, different day. This is how do we help forms and named users know what their email address is. All right, and our final topic is how to view open sessions by users, view any checked out documents, and release entry locks. So under the activity node in our admin console, we can see who's logged in and who's maybe inactive. In fact, we have a list of users right now. My system is fairly quiet, so I've logged in with that demo account, and it's been logged in but inactive for 6 minutes. We have an admin account that I'm using right now for this admin console, so it's not inactive at all. And if this demo account, for example, you came in on the weekend and you need to do some work in the Laserfiche repository, some maintenance, you can disconnect that user, assuming you have admin rights to get here in the first place. All right. So that's there. Now there is probably always going to be in most systems the WF user $ account. That is the workflow subscriber service. Do not disconnect this. You will break your workflows. So please don't disconnect that. If you do, you might need to restart the workflow subscriber service on the server itself, but don't disconnect it from here. That's all I'm going to say about that. Now notice on the admin account, I cannot disconnect myself. Probably a good thing. But any other users in the list, if they need to be, you can kick them out. That'll just disconnect their session. Now that could affect them if they have not checked out documents. What's a checked out document? It's usually an Outlook, sorry, not Outlook, but an Office document, Word, Excel, or PowerPoint that somebody has chosen to check out to their local machine and edit offline. When they're done, they can check it back in. It's actually a very good way to edit Word or Excel or PowerPoint docs that you have stored in Laserfiche, because it allows for disconnections and a very elegant method to reconnect that document. In fact, if you double click an Office document to edit it in Laserfiche, it'll download and open up in that application, but the link is live. If your connection were to drop and you try to do a close to save the document back into Laserfiche and you don't have that link to Laserfiche, you have to actually save the Office document locally first. And then once you are reconnected to Laserfiche, those edits don't reconnect automatically. You'll have to upload the document into the folder and then tell it that you want to upload it as a new version of the old existing document. Whereas if you were to check out a document from the repository, one can, for example, you can choose the checkout option. I don't have that rights at this point, but you would check it out. It would then download to your local machine. You could even point to what folder you want to put it in. Then you can edit it offline. It doesn't matter if the connection to Laserfiche was connected or not. In fact, you might be editing on an airplane and then come back to the office and then check the document back in, at which point you can save it as an overwrite or a new version or whatever you want. But the fact that it disconnected is no big deal. So disconnecting sessions could interrupt somebody who had a Word document open, but they had not checked it out. So that's my point. Now, checked out documents will be listed here. Many times you'll see active users who have them checked out, and they'll be checked out for a certain number of days. You can tell where it's been checked out from. If it's a checked out document from a user who is no longer employed, well, you're going to have to probably force the checkout and check it back in, which unfortunately will not save the settings on that checked out document. If the user had checked it back in, all those changes they made would be uploaded into the system. But if you have to force a checkout document back into the system, it basically just breaks the checkout. and disconnects the link. And if you had let's say it was a laptop and it was already cleared because it's been several weeks and somebody finally found that the document was checked out, if you disconnect it, any edits that the previous user had made will not be saved back into that document. It releases the checkout, so the other users could edit the document, but any previous changes weren't saved, or at least the last changes that they might have made would not be saved. All right. So that's that. Now, current actions under activity, this is for custom apps, so you'll never see anything there. And as I mentioned, entry locks, on occasion, a folder or a document may get locked due to some application or system effect. End users themselves can't force a document to be locked. It just kind of happens. It's rare these days, but if it does occur, that folder or document can be released. It's just a task, and it shows up as a release entry lock under all tasks when you have that locked item selected in this view. All right, so that way you get that. Okay, so that is our topics here today, and hopefully you've learned a lot there. We've gone through all those different items, and additional resources in our webinar here include our YouTube channel. I would recommend viewing that. Also, Laserfiche has a couple very handy sites. I highly recommend going to answers.laserfiche.com. You will need a login to that. It's free, but if you've already got one support site account, you can get that. It's free. You just have to know your company name and company serial number, and you get a free account that allows you to view and post questions on the Answers forum. There's a solutions exchange for different methods to solve problems. Great way to learn how to solve a business process using forms, workflows, and your repository. And finally, the support site, either laserfiche.com/support or support.laserfiche.com. And again, also our city's digital website, which is cdi.support. You find numerous links to various events and other items as well. And that being said, I thank you so much for your attendance here today, and I will open it up to questions. And I see there's a couple already, so fantastic. Let's go through our questions here. For those who don't want to attend anymore, just please answer that survey, and we look forward to seeing your comments there. A couple questions. Can we talk about the difference between trust and inherit on user accounts? Oh, you mean, let's go switch back to our admin console here and bring that up, and we'll go look at our users, and we'll look at a repository user, for example. Now, the trust and inherit is not on a named user, which I really wasn't focusing on Windows accounts, but I think you're referring to Windows accounts. And if we look at the authentication box and we have trust, deny, or inherit from group membership, let's see what the effective rights are if we were inheriting and see what that really means. The authentication, again, it's probably going to take a while for this to bring the pop-up. Okay, so that's linked to a supergroup called Everyone. All right. And if anybody who logs in, let's go to that supergroup under Everyone, open up its properties, and see what its authentication setting is. And in my case, it is set for trust. So if that's set for the Everyone supergroup and you're a Windows user, when you log in, you're basically a part of this Everyone supergroup, and your authentication is set to trust or whatever is set. It doesn't necessarily have to be set. In fact, I've seen it many times where it's set no for everybody, and it still works just fine. If you're using LFDS authentication, that's where the authentication is occurring, not here in the repository. So it just depends on how you're implementing that. If you're using LFDS, I think it's more useful in that regard. So that is, I think, what you're referring to when you ask about trust and inheritance on those users. But again, that's a Windows account. Another question is kind of related, I think. When adding Windows accounts to directory server, again, off topic, but we'll answer it here. When we have to add the Windows account to the repository, we've tested adding a group in the admin console under directory account. For there, add the Windows account to LFDS group in directory server. Yes, you can create in directory server a group there, and then add the Windows account in LFDS. Oh, okay, you're doing kind of a group within a group. The method I think that would work best, if I'm reading this question correctly, is to create a domain group, which you've done, I think. Actually, you might not have done this. I would create a domain group first, and you might have to create different groups depending on what you're trying to do. For example, if all you're trying to do is create a group that has, let's call it a full license, right? And you might create domain groups based on their license type that's going to be automated in LFDS. So let's pretend that full user is all you have as license types in your system. You could create a domain group called all Laserfiche users, or maybe just call it full Laserfiche users. The AD group, you can add that in LFDS and make sure that your users are in that group, right? So just add them to the group. And then in LFDS, under identity providers, there is, for that identity, for that domain, for example, there's a rule that you could set a sync rule so that if you add users to that domain group in 24 hours or less, depending on how often, it syncs every 24 hours. You can do a manual sync, but every 24 hours usually sometime in the morning, that group would synchronize based on that rule. So you've added it in one place in AD. LFDS would synchronize that user to the group. It would automatically be assigned because you set your rule so that that group is assigned a full user. That user then gets that group. Now that you would also add that domain account here under Windows accounts. So you can actually add a Windows account, but not necessarily a user, but that group, that same full Laserfiche users domain group here. Trust is, or inherit is fine. I've even seen it left and it works just fine anyway. And then because that group is here, all that user has to do is attempt to sign into the repository with Windows authentication, and it will authenticate from LFDS and set them in, and then their user account actually then is added, even if it wasn't in this list originally, because they're in that group, that AD group, and they signed in. Now that their name shows up individually here as well. So I think that might be what you're looking for. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but that's the way I would do it, so that you don't have to kind of create a special LFDS group. You just use your Windows groups and you're good to go. All right, a little bit off topic. Hopefully it made sense. Another question is, if you delete a named user, does it remove them from the owners or last editors of documents? You know, that's a good question. It used to, many years ago, if you did delete the user from the repository and you went and looked at the column for last edited by, it would kind of cause issues and they wouldn't be visible. The named user, the owner, that's a really good question. You know what, I'm going to have to answer that one offline because I think it does these days. It doesn't have too much of an effect. You could find the answers in the help guide for sure, which is probably where I'm going to go, to be honest, but we'll do that. So is there best practices for deleting accounts? There might be. That might be a great topic for another webinar, but at the moment, off the top of my head, I can't exactly answer that one. All right. Great questions. I know you're dying for more, so I think we've got some admins in there, but in this list of attendees here. So thank you all for your questions. We'll keep it open for a few more minutes here, but otherwise, thanks so much for those challenging questions. At least for me, sometimes I don't have all the questions, but we're done for now. Appreciate all your time, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. And we hope to see you here from CDI, from all of us here. We hope to see you at the next webinar. Have a great day.